Hi, ladies. This week, the doctrine is on sanctification, a long word that sounds very impressive when you casually use it during conversation. Sanctification is incredible promise that comes after we give our lives to Jesus. You see, sanctification refers to the believer's progressive growth in holiness or conformity to the image of Christ. It means being set apart for God and His work and becoming more fully obedient to God in daily life. It's God's will for the believer. Well, we saw this as we studied the life of Jeremiah this week. God's call, mission, and grace sustained Jeremiah and accomplished his purposes within him. The personal suffering God allowed Jeremiah to endure molded his character and taught him to depend on God. It was God who enabled Jeremiah to be obedient to the costly call of 40 years of ministry to unrepentant people. As a believer, I'm so thankful for justification, meaning God's forgiving and declaring righteousness to a sinner who believes in Jesus. But oh, how I love the promise of sanctification. God actively involves himself in the day-to-day walk of every believer to grow us into the image of Jesus. Well, that being said, I don't usually actually like the actual process of it. You see, it's a beautiful process where the Holy Spirit reveals sin, prompts faith, and empowers obedience in the days and the moments of a believer's life. But it can feel very uncomfortable, and at times discouragement can set in when we don't see the holy results right away. But when I believe that God can use anything I face to sanctify me, when I recognize his intentional orchestration of my life for my good and his glory, my pain actually yields growth as I learn how to depend on God. My victories represent his glorious work, not my own effort. I learn to abide in him, knowing that only he can produce in me what requires of me. I am freed from trying to please God in my own strength. Unfortunately, ladies, we cannot, in our own strength, will ourselves to be more like Jesus or try harder to be better. Sanctification is a divine work by God. He is the one that changes us from the inside out. But sanctification is a partnership. In order to be changed, to grow, we need to surrender to the working of the Holy Spirit. We need to be in prayer, Bible study, fellowship, worship, and in the service of God and his people in the world together with trust in the Holy Spirit to change our character. I think about when Jeremiah was thrown in the muddy cistern. There was no way he was getting out of that on his own strength. Ebed lowered rags to him and lifted him up. The rags are like our circumstances or his word or his people to lift us up out of the pit closer to the image of Jesus. But Jeremiah wasn't just a bystander in his rescues. He had a role to play. He actually had to reach out and grab those rags and hold on in order to be lifted up. You see, when I do not believe in God's active involvement in my spiritual growth, I fail to recognize his sanctifying work in my life. I fail to grow spiritually as God intends, and I miss God's best for me. When I believe God can use anything I face to sanctify me, my pain yields growth as I learn to depend on God. See, God's deliberate process of sanctification in our lives reveals his persevering love for us. God did not save us and then leave us alone to figure it out and do the best we could. So how have you experienced God's ongoing, active involvement in the ups and downs of your life? In what ways does God's customized care and purposeful work within you reveal how much he loves you? The process of sanctification is not always joyful or easy, like I mentioned before. To grow spiritually, we must turn from specific sin, deny self, and trust God instead of ourselves. When have you had to endure a little or a lot of pain for spiritual gain? In what ways has the process of sanctification been somewhat painful for you? I'm so thankful that we serve a God who uses it all for his glory. Love you, ladies. Hope you have a great week.